I'm a recently departed Samsung person.
Yeah.
And a free roaming agent. And I'm inviting my team on now. We have 9 people here to talk about metadata, to talk about discovery. Okay. If you've ever tried to herd 9 people into any common goal, it's tricky. So we're going to do our very best to be kind to each other, to learn about each other's businesses, and have a little bit of fun. To do that, to that end, I asked them all to kind of pick topics that they thought were most fun. And I'm going to first kind of softball them into explaining a little bit about who they are and what they do. And then we'll try the topics. And if it doesn't work, it was just an experiment to get through 9 people quickly. Or 8, I guess. 8 of you. I'll shut up eventually. And then we'll have open discussion. We can just talk about the great thing of discovery. So I'm going to start with Darren Gill. Darren Gill is VP of Products at Rovi. Where are you? There he is.
I'm right here.
Stand up a little bit or something. There you go. Hey, there he is.
Hello, everyone.
Rovi is a worldwide leader in metadata providing, and that was almost English. And Darren has recently joined Rovi with some very new capabilities and very exciting capabilities. And I have a word for you because I did get Brian Fife to tell me the word.
Oh, yes. What's the word?
The anaphora is the art of taking a topic that you want to search on and not having to repeat the same words each time you go deeper in the search. So you can say, show me all James Bond movies. No, just the ones with Sean Connery. You don't have to say James Bond movies again. It's the art of just speaking naturally as you do sort of the search. So that's something you've brought to their...
Yes, but we don't have those fancy words. I'm not sure I know what anaphora is. Yes, at Rovi we've worked quite a bit on personal discovery solution, which does include voice. And one aspect of that is really using what we think of as a knowledge graph to make the data much more semantic and understandable, and that's very powerful in the voice or the burgeoning voice environment. So that ability to, what we think of it as context in a conversation, so we think of it as the conversation product, so that most searches today are not one and done. I mean, occasionally you know exactly the name of the movie and you just ask for that and you get it, but the idea to browse through a list of movies, or you can't think of the name of that movie. The one I mentioned earlier was, what was the name of the movie with Tony Soprano and Elaine from Seinfeld? A lot of you may know what movie I'm talking about right now, but it would be a natural question that you would need to use the semantics to understand it. Context is that idea of conversation, being able to detect when the next query comes, are you able to determine whether it's a follow-on or not? So when do the Kings play? If that came up, to understand that it's the hockey game, and then to think of when's the next game after that, or to pick another team to be able to have that context.
So it's extremely contextual. And what is the weak link in that? Is it the context, or is it the meta? Is it the voice recognition? Is it the metadata? Where does it get hard?
Well, it gets hard with the connections in the metadata. So you have to understand, you have to have some algorithm that can figure out the previous question, what's the subject of that, and the follow-on question, if you can detect any sort of entity, does it have a relation to the previous question? And if you, we use a graph to do that. So understand the distance from what one question was to the next. If it's too far, that's will determine that it could be something else.
Good. And I will come back to it. I was on a panel last week where someone asked me if I ever thought voice control of television would ever happen. So some people believe it's still a long way off. It sounds like it's much closer.
Yeah, I mean, the trick to all of it, I think, is just to speak naturally. I think that's what we really need to get to, and not be limited to just saying the title or just saying an actor's name.
Great. Rich Cusick is General Manager of Grace Note Video. It's funny, when we started this email campaign, the email back and forth to get ready for this thing, it was a TMS address. I just asked him, may I say that you're Grace Note Video now? And he said yes. So, you know, as I understand it, I've known the Grace Note guys for a very long time. I've known the TMS folks for a long time. We used TMS at TiVo decades ago. You know, you guys have a great offering, and it just got a lot stronger. What are you most excited about with this new offering and new capabilities that you have?
It was a really great marriage of companies. Obviously, there's the most obvious, which was Grace Note powers iTunes and 90% of the music world. And what a lot of people don't know is they also power iTunes Radio. So it's not just the core metadata that is really important. And that's really what both companies are ultimately focused on, is the best quality metadata that we can. But the technology services on top of that, again, iTunes Radio and recommendations around music are very, very strong. And some of the underlying technologies around Content ID, et cetera, that support that are really strong. So if you think about all of those brought to TV, right? So being the best that we can on a worldwide basis around TV metadata, and then some of the same underlying technologies around recommendations, and certainly Content ID. Grayson has great technology around not just ACR, but video fingerprinting, and some of the associated technologies that you can do around ad replacement, program promotion, et cetera.
So in that you're getting into services, and tell us about some of the services that you're helping manufacturers and you know.
Yeah, so obviously it's next-gen, powering next-gen UIs, so photo coverage, trailers, everything to power next-gen UIs. Then the services around them, so universal search, personalization, recommendations, content identification, et cetera. So a whole service layer, and then we have a professional services arm, formerly Gravity, which does work around next-gen UIs, implementation work, reference designs.
So you find that your customers have obviously a brand and a way they want their UI to look. Do most of them do their own work for UI, and then just use your engine, or do they use? Do they ask you to help them understand the state of the art?
Yeah, I think one of the lessons that I had from my previous days was that trying to own the full UI and provide an end-to-end solution is tough, because one of the primary branding tools for operators and CE manufacturers is that interface. But we want to provide as many tools as we can to make that interface the best that it can be, whether it be the data that powers kind of the photos or the video around that, or the services such as search, for example, in enabling that. But and we want to provide advice in terms of where we see next-gen UIs and the bleeding edge in terms of where we see interfaces going, but I think we're one step away from wanting to provide a direct-to-consumer service ourselves.
Got it. Offer Weintraub is from a company I had not honestly heard of, but when he told me about it, it sounds very interesting. By Access Orca, you create magazines around metadata, so that if you get really into Game of Thrones and you want to see all the actors laid out in a magazine sort of format, this is what you're doing with Orange, and tell us more about that.
Yeah. First of all, the company is part of the Orange brand, which is well known in Europe.
Sure.
One of the big ones. And what we do is we convert catalogs to magazine automatically. So video on demand catalogs, EPG, TV series, actors, directors, everything we just take and extract a lot of data from different sources like Tribune, Getty Images, videos, a lot of different sources, and create magazines. So metadata now can tell us not only be used to discover content, but also to tell stories by their own. So all those magazines, take an actor. Okay, so the biography, filmography, this is trivial, right? But then things like red carpet images, connectivity map, who he worked with, who inspired him, who he grew up with, so this is connectivity map, things like life path, different milestones, born, studied, the different projects, left house, married, divorced, et cetera, et cetera. So really metadata now is a mean to tell stories, and the magazine is a great format to tell these stories.
And the guy from Swiss Snacks.
Got it. Okay. When I can, by the way, because there's so many of us, I'm going to try to pair them actually as competitors, because that's why we did Rovi and TMS or Gracenote right next to each other. And now I'm going to do the same thing again. Owen Dowling of Boxfish is using smart technology and machines very smart technology. Fuck all smart. And it's, am I the first guy to drop an F-bomb onto the stage? I hope not. God, no. So, to search through what is being said in a program and provide real-time metadata and let that be later used as a search so you can find all the shows about a specific topic that you're interested in, but also in real time to find find the people who are talking about the things you're most excited about. So tell us more about that, and know that I'm going to put your competitor up immediately after you, so take him down now.
Sure. Okay. Here we go. Well, we're a data platform, and one of the things we do is understand what TV is speaking about at any given second. And it's less to do with kind of search or indexing or keywords, but it's more to do with, you know, clusters and discussions and what are the core concepts being discussed in long-form content. And then that data, along with various other data, is being used in discovery products. So, for example, knowing what points in a DVR program are of interest to a consumer, search, you know, enhanced content, but also for analytics. So finding out when users are tuning in and tuning out of content to see, you know, what segments in shows are driving tune in and what segments are driving tune out, and relaying that back to an individual, and then getting a much richer view. You know, basically it's topic-based understanding of both the users and the content. And that's driving forward new products and new analytics.
And is that mostly for news programs and the like, or is it used for all sorts of?
It's used for all sorts. So, you know, for scripted content, they're using it for enhancement. So you can use it for Game of Thrones. For discovery, it really suits you guys can, unscripted content like talk shows, news, sports, reality shows. But it's across the board.
Got it. Thank you. Nikos Iatropoulos, was I close?
Very.
I had a Greek friend when I was young, and I
Sorry to hear that.
butchered every Greek name I've ever had the opportunity to butcher.
Is this the healthier?
I think we've got somebody joining us.
It looks so pretty.
Lingospot does something very similar to Boxfish. What we need is another panelist. Would she come up? That would be great.
We forgot.
And you shared with me that you've recently partnered with a competitor of theirs.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you're coming at it a little differently.
Maybe later. Okay.
About it.
Thank you.
All right. So about a year ago, I hadn't heard of Boxfish, and
we
I'm sure.
cannot leave this building without doing that cake.
I thought 9 was hard to wrangle.
What?
9 and a ghost. Sorry, go ahead.
We'll try it again. So about a year ago, I'd never heard of Boxfish, and I'm sure they hadn't heard of us. We've been around for almost 7 years, and over that course, we've been analyzing digital content. We started with online publishing. We've worked with most of the major news magazine publishers on their .com site. So that's the area of our expertise. And we partnered with a company, I can probably mention it on here, but I'm not sure if it's relevant, to provide us the closed caption transcript. We see that just as another input into our engine, another form of content. We're doing similar things with that input, but we're not really monitoring the stations. So we're getting the image, we're getting the transcript, and we're using the natural language processing, semantic search technology, and the data that we've developed over the years. So we've, on the online side, we've processed close to 4 billion articles. We've identified over 100 million entities and concepts, and more importantly have over 6 years of data of how users conceive and interact with those entities within a particular context. So we're using that intelligence, and we're mostly focusing on bringing in relevant content, and my pitch is going to be later, and making content recommendations. One of those inputs is a transcript, an analysis of a transcript. So we're definitely overlapping, but we're not direct competitors.
Got it. Got it. Who has bigger people? I mean, if there was a fist fight, where would it go?
I'm Irish.
Yeah.
I'm Greek.
Keep in mind, he's going to be drunk before it starts.
Yeah, you're right.
Moving forward, sorry. John Zelenka of Digital Smiths is going to talk to us about data and metadata and analytics and helping people find what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good place to start to maybe just back up a step and talk a little bit about why Digital Smiths is in business and why we've had a good amount of success over the last couple of years. I mentioned some of these statistics earlier on a panel, but every quarter we do a consumer survey of about 3,000 either pay TV, over-the-top video consumers. And some of the responses are just pretty staggering that all yield to the fact that we have a major content discovery problem on our hands. We have one statistic that says the average pay TV subscriber gets access to over 150 channels. 80% of them watch fewer than 10. The same survey, also tells us that 60% of those same people pay over $100 for either a cable or a satellite bill. And, at the same time, almost 80% of them have either purchased or, rented from a transactional VOD perspective, 0 assets within the last month.
Is that 10 per household or 10 per person?
Sorry, the 10.
The 10 channels that they watch.
Oh yeah, it's per respondent. So
Okay, so the thing that I found interesting is that my 10 are different than my kids' 10, which is different than my wife's 10. So we actually do use a large part of our bundle. But I've heard that number multiple times, that the average person watches 8 channels regularly and 20 channels ever.
yep.
But it turns out everybody else in the house has a different 8 and 20. So
Yeah, it's certainly a factor depending on how many people you have in the house. I mean, those numbers have been really consistent, almost whether it's our survey or others. How much channel use is actually taken on from the bundle. So it's there's a problem. We have a multi-layer video discovery platform. It's cloud-based software as a service. Search, recommendations, which are kind of the obvious parts. We also have a business console that allows you to strategically tune all the results and present content in a scientific way to users. But what we treat as very foundational is the management, the analysis, and the delivery of metadata as a foundational aspect in all of that. So we're always combining multiple sources of content-based metadata, the things that TMS and Rovi provide. We're also analyzing all kinds of viewer behavioral data, both implicit and explicit events when people are interacting with a service, helping form their profile. And also then it's taking all of that data and providing it back to our customers in a way that is meaningful and actionable. So you can actually go back and start to solve some of the problems that are revealed in our survey. From a business perspective, how do I tune results? How do I make things more relevant to users so I actually can increase my revenue? And it's really kind of that analytics and the business console and reporting that data back to our customers in an actionable way that I think is the most exciting thing, in discovery and what's going on right now.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back to that, because one of the questions I'll ask all of you is, how do you know who's on the couch, and how do we get better at that with time? Because I think it's an important question for what we're doing. Christy, obviously, I don't mean to group you, but it helps me. I have a very small brain, and they might have similar issues. I don't know. So I didn't mean that you have small brains. I have trouble understanding the difference between some of the companies. So Christy, help me understand. Christy Martin of Think Analytics, you're focusing on personalization, also helping people discover the things they need to discover and they want to discover. Help me understand how you differ and how you offer different things altogether, and how you're similar to.
Yeah, I mean, certainly all the stats that John just mentioned are things that the whole industry is trying to solve. So whether it's through navigation or personalized recommendations, everybody has recognized that this is one of the big challenges over the next couple of years, especially with more devices, more content, OTT coming online. So I think from a Think Analytics perspective, 2 areas that we really focus on is contextualization and monetization. So how do you go beyond just personalization, as in I'm just trying to find the most relevant the most common thing that you would look for. I'm not trying to predict your behavior, but actually contextualizing what you're doing across all the different dimensions. So finding the viewing behavior, analyzing your viewing behavior to understand your patterns, understanding the device that you're watching it on, perhaps time of day, understanding the content type you're looking at. So it broadens the algorithm. So you might use a collaborative filtering algorithm for certain types of content that's more popularity based or trending on Twitter, whereas in another scenario, a truly personalized recommendation is more effective. And so understanding the whole context of what the user experience is trying to do from a journey standpoint, what type of device you're on, what type of content, subscription packages. The worst thing in the world is to recommend this great piece of content and then go, yes, psych, you can't watch it. So applying all of that into the results, and then from a monetization standpoint, doing what advertisers has known forever is if you find good content and you recommend it to people and you're offering a candidate set, that's an opportunity to do promotion. So whether that's including some percentage of transactional VOD or upsell the premium packages, people are more likely to buy HBO if they're seeing something that they like than just a generic ad for it. So taking that whole concept and rolling it up along with the analytics and the feedback loops, I mean, I think nobody can get around that try it, iterate it, fix it process.
So you're both trying to raise the value in the whole ecosystem by making sure that what consumers watch is relevant to them, and that can be different for different people in the household, and that's a bigger problem of itself. But I mean, it's getting people to subscribe and buy more video and have more relevant advertising around it.
Absolutely. Drive the business objectives.
Got it. Brandon Estros of Udeo, you're doing what I thought was impossible. I have spent at Samsung many hours talking to all of the video providers on the planet and saying, hey, we'd like to create a unified experience so people can enjoy your content in a unified app and just search for Breaking Bad, and they don't have to know if that's on Amazon Prime or if it's on Netflix or where it is. You can just search for Breaking Bad and find it, or if it's on live TV or catch-up TV or whatever. So you're actually doing it. You have an app where people can search for something that, sorry, you take over. I don't want to tell what you do.
Yeah. So we're consumer facing, a little bit different than the guys up here on the panel, and we're the leading search and discovery app on iOS, Android, and Kindle and the web. And really, what we're creating is, and since 2008, we're creating the smart layer that vastly simplifies users' lives by making it easy for them to watch and find any TV show or movie across any device, provider, and location. There's fragmentation across all levels. There's unlimited amount of content that users can watch these days. There's many devices for them to watch it. There's content library issues. Users just want a one and done, simple, intuitive user interface that they can keep up with their favorite TV shows when there's new episodes. They can discover new shows and start binging those from the start and know where to actually watch those. Or if they just want to discover a new movie that's available with their subscriptions, such as Amazon Prime or Netflix or Hulu Plus, that they can actually watch with what they're already authenticated to.
How do the content owners feel about it? Do you get cease and desist letters?
Yeah, we have a great relationship with all of our content partners, and really we provide a real value for them, and that's onboarding new customers. That's signing up new people for subscriptions, and getting them to actually install their TV Everywhere apps or getting their footprint expanded, as well as retaining and engaging and increasing engagement with their existing content. So, it really solves key problems for our partners.
But don't they want to fully own the customer and never have them out of their interface?
They want to retain the customer and keep that customer paying, and as well as add new customers. So as long as we're fulfilling those two things, we're in a great place with our partners, and usually.
Great. And on that, I'm going to just open this up to anybody. We talked about it a little bit in the email beforehand, but who owns the customer? And should different content be available on different boxes? Should people who own content start thinking about bringing other content into their boxes? So, for example, should cable boxes bring in over-the-top content? How do you feel about that? And if you have an offering that would help them do that, do you think it will happen, or is it still going to remain very disparate services where you have online services here and live TV here and never the twain shall meet? Do you have a...
John and I can talk to that a little bit. I think we're really proud of, for example, interfaces both on TiVo and on Sharp, for example, which kind of blend your video, your OTT experience and your traditional linear experience into kind of one interface. And, I don't think anybody's fully cracked it yet, but we're getting closer, a lot closer to kind of that seamless experience. We just think about it as, from a consumer perspective, consuming video and being happy with that video experience. And if we can unify it and make it easier, I think everybody wins. Very similar to what Brandon's doing with his app.
Go ahead, Richard.
Do you think the providers themselves will do it, or will it only be on third-party things like a TiVo or a smart TV?
Well, through TiVo, which is our parent company now, we were acquired in February. A lot of the service providers, Suddenlink, RCN, a lot of those have been recently announced, are actually distributing Netflix onto the set-top. So a lot of those announcements came out just over the last 2 weeks or so, and distributing Netflix, right over the set-top in the TiVo environment.
So that's a premium set-top box that you have to pay for above and beyond, usual the free box that comes with your cable service. Do you think that's a signal that they'll move to putting that on all of their boxes?
It's hard to say, and I can't, speak for them, but I think it's definitely a step in that direction. In some of TiVo's implementations, it's a significant component of the footprint. Virgin Media, for example, in the UK, I think there's upwards of 2 million TiVo boxes and environments that are deployed over there. And so I think, it's a significant signal that they're willing to put that onto the box. you know, a lot of the anecdotal feedback that I've heard from the operators has been, if they're going to go to Netflix anyway, and probably half of my subscribers do, why not sort of keep them in my environment?
It certainly worked for some of the, you know, Xbox has brought a unified interface into, you know, live TV and all the over-the-top content plus gaming in one sort of place, and it's all in the same plane. It's very interesting to see. I think they have to do it almost to compete.
I think it makes total sense, just like Brandon's app makes total sense. Like the idea that you could search or find across all of the different sources, that the MSOs really need to be the ones that are in there. I mean, they have, even based on the numbers that Digital Smith was putting out on even 10 channels, there's still a dominant amount of viewing that we all know is happening through the MSO on the linear television. So if you could search from there to cover all those, I think that's hugely powerful for the MSO. I think the numbers were 42% of cable subscribers have a streaming service, like they pay for that in addition to that $100 cable bill. So they're there. So I think that data could be hugely valuable for...
Well, and the additional one, too, that we were talking about in the previous panel was the over-indexing in terms of consumption of TV through those people who have two services is a high over-indexing of consumption of traditional TV for people who have OTT services.
And your analytics for figuring out churn are sort of devoid. You'll have those binge watchers who are on, you know, the time that they get to watch, they're sucked into a season on one of those services, and that's like just a blank data field for how you're figuring out what you want to do. So I think eventually it'll be part of the MSO offering.
Right.
And ideally, I'm sorry, I was going to say, ideally, if people are finding the content, they can find content that they would go to another source for just because they didn't know it was there. So a lot of times, content that's there on a VOD library, you're going over to Apple TV just because it's so much quicker and easier to find it. So I think as
Convenience is huge.
yeah, as the convenience gets there, and then likewise, if they're controlling the UI, then you can also control when you send some away. So you could put the VOD title first, and then path of last resort is to send them off the library.
And you would know what they went off to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, pay TV and OTT offering has to include all sort of data, because other people, if they won't do it, other people will do. And I hope, you know, nobody listens to this session and it's not recorded, but you know the names, you know who provides everything to everyone. The names, you know, guys like Popcorn Time, Zona TV, Flickstore, you can go there and find anything you want in the world. And the interface is fantastic, okay? So if they, you know, if your pay TV operators won't provide it, someone else will.
So that's an interesting question. One of the things that we, you know, I've studied at different data companies I've worked for, is that when people are presented with a library of here's, you know, what you're already paying for and here's what you're not paying for, people are afraid to click on the things they're not paying for. They assume there's a barrier to click on things that are in VOD libraries or anywhere that they're not used to going because they're afraid there's going to be some hidden charge that they don't know about. Is there a best learnings about how to present, you know, here's what you're already paying for, here's what you could get, and how do you get people, how do you entice people to move to content they don't own? Sorry, that was a tough question.
Yeah.
Somebody else? I think there are two different mindsets when a user's looking at content. There's the, I know what I want, and let's call that the search environment, and then there's the browse mode. I'm not sure what I want, and I'm going to browse around. And I think in the first mode, in search, it's a really great idea to show them all the content that's available, because it's like you're interrupting them if you don't. The user said, I'm looking for this. If it's not available, it's not in the window, you don't have it in your package, you get empty search results. And so user searches again. It's this frustration level of, you know the movie exists, but you can't get it. So the idea of being able to present that movie and say, I have it, it's not available, you could get it through this package, or we don't have it at this time, you could save it. I think that's more important than doing it in the browse situation, which is more figuring out a way in which you can do analytics, collaborative filtering, different ways to upsell the user.
Well, the funny thing was, when I was at TV Guide, was we did this study on the magazine, and 90% plus or something of users assumed that all the advertising within TV Guide magazine, or excuse me, all the editorial within TV Guide magazine was paid for. And so a little lob to Kelly, but I think if you do a great job at personalization and bring the experience, whether it's program promotion or upsell of a cable, you know, as long as that's relevant and great content to people, it's a long way towards getting them over the pay barrier, right? Like Apple has gotten great at making the pricing and the I don't think the personalization is actually great on Apple today, but I think that if you combine great pricing with a great personalized experience, that barrier all of a sudden gets really good, as it is on the Apple Store, I think.
So making the match to your willingness to actually watch it, the price has to match it, and then it's just an easy click, and you don't think about it.
Yeah. We actually have done, we also do content discovery, okay? We provide personalization and content discovery to the Orange Group, so it's a big stuff in Europe. Anyway, we've done this study and experiment. So basically, when you do content discovery and recommendations, you would try to maximize the benefit of the consumer, right? To give him the best results. But we played another game, and we said, let's add the pay TV operators' benefits or priorities. And they would want to promote, let's say, in this week, HBO content, or in another week, more pricey content. And we found, it's not very surprising, but there is a threshold that the user is still satisfied with more pricey content, but of course there is a threshold, but if you don't pass this threshold, it's still okay. So you can play the benefits for both sides, the operator and the consumer.
Got it. One of the things we also discussed before we got together was the idea that, sorry, my brain just went completely dead, which was an awesome thing to happen right there. Was the idea that this is topic number 3. More people watch content alone than typically have in historic viewing. So you think of TV as a very family thing, everybody's sitting on the couch together, you find something to watch together. There were only 3 channels, of course you all watch together, and you picked MASH, right? Now there are thousands of choices, and each person in the house is watching something unique and different, and often the number of unique streams going into home we've now seen is something like 2.6 unique things being watched in a home during prime time. Which is a little higher than the 2.4 televisions in the home. So that's, it means somebody's watching on a tablet or something. But so in that world, how do we identify the personalization for the person who's actually using the TV at that moment, or the device at that moment?
ACR is one solution. So,
Does that identify the person?
That's true. It doesn't identify the person. I think you can certainly connect, though, the device to what they're watching, right? And the combination of the two, I think, all of a sudden makes the experience a lot more valuable, right? And particularly for bringing third parties in, whether it be for a CE manufacturer trying to personalize the discovery experience, or even a phone manufacturer trying to marry two-screen content, obviously, with the TV, it provides a pretty unique. You know who the mobile device is. If you can marry the mobile device to TV, you've got a much more powerful mechanism than you had before, right?
Yeah, and sometimes the actual individual isn't as important as the behavior. So you can make recommendations off of the behavior of how the family room TV normally watches. And on Saturday mornings you have this pattern, and on Friday evenings you have that pattern. And so there's a lot that can be inferred just by the behavior of the individual device in a shared device environment, as opposed to trying to guess who the individual is. And then as technology moves forward, things like voice can be used. And so there's a lot of stuff on the horizon, too, that could do, the creepy camera in the room.
Yeah,
I don't know if we'll ever get that one.
Does the identification get explicit as opposed to implicit? Not explicit as in gross, but explicit as I've signed into my TV.
Yeah, right now that's kind of the vast majority of how those things happen. Like, our system supports multiple profiles. You can even blend profiles. So, if I log in, it's all cloud-based. I can say, the son and the daughter, and one of the parents is in the room. So, I can actually return blended recommendations. So it's not just for one person, and it's kind of the age-old, my TV just keeps recommending SpongeBob because my son was watching it. So from a system standpoint, how you get that signal in, whether it's self-identified, which is mostly how it goes right now, or Microsoft Connect, I think, was experimenting with being able to identify through the camera, being able to view who's there. But over time, I think, in all honesty, that needs to become a lot less proactive. It needs to be a little bit more reactive and easier, because it's the same thing with search. Search right now, you're largely using a keyboard. Things like voice command make that a lot better. I look at it the same way for identifying, who the profile is, who's in the living room, who's using the tablet. If there's an easier way to do that, you can just take the signal and identify the profile from there.
Yeah, and I think today explicit profiles are still relatively low, like maybe even 10% take rate of people. But as secondary devices are there, it also incents people. They get used to having the profile on their tablet, so they might use an explicit profile. But it is definitely a short-term, not the panacea.
Or perhaps even using the secondary device, which is happening increasingly as a remote control. So if you have 3 people in the room, they each have their own phone, and they have an app on their phone. So that phone tends to be much more personalized than the TV. So getting the signal of the channel just changed from my phone signals that I'm watching. If it changed from my wife's phone, and obviously we're in the same room, there's going to be a lot of channel changing, but then that sends another signal. And I agree, it's not necessarily important who it is. If you look at viewing patterns, most people will end up watching TV. I know my son watches TV on set times and on set channels. So being able to personalize the content for a particular moment in time and getting that viewing pattern, the same thing that happens with cookies online. You don't really know who it is. You just know the viewing history, and you basically target content based on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what Yidio is really trying to do, right? You're in a household, you have multiple subscriptions, you have a Netflix subscription, you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you have your Hulu Plus subscription, you may consume content on iTunes, you have your cable subscription across TV everywhere, you have 2 daughters, a son. Each of them have their own devices, but when they log into the Yidio platform, they're authenticated. It automatically knows their preferences, what their favorite TV shows are, what their favorite movies are, what their actual subscriptions they have, and it personalized to them very uniquely, whether they're using their iPhone or they go on the bus and whip out their iPad, or they come home and they jump on their laptop. As long as they're logged in, it's persistent, it's personalized, it's unique to that user, and really allows them to extract more value in a simple way that's persistent across devices and across content availability and subscriptions and providers that they may use.
Yeah,
It's different for each person, right?
Yeah.
It's going to vary. Some people might like princess movies, some people might like action movies, and some people may have 1 to 3 subscriptions, one might have 0.
Yeah, it's definitely, and there's a his, hers, and ours, right? So there's the what do I watch when I'm by myself, which is very different than what I watch when I'm with my wife, which is very different than what she watches when I'm not around. I mean, I'm certain right now the house is filled with things that I don't enjoy, but they're fantastic for her. And the minute I come home, I hear the TV go silent, as if she's in trouble. She's allowed to watch anything she wants, but it's allowed, like I have a say. But that's also true of the kids. So everybody has, they're not allowed to watch certain things. But when I walk in the room, I often hear the TV go silent. Oh, Dad's home. So it's kind of this what you're willing to admit you watch, and what I want displayed in front of my family. Do I want them to know that I watch Game of Thrones? I don't even want the kids to know about Game of Thrones, right? It's that kind of sensitivity. It's very important to me, but it's not something I want them to know about. So, God, I would never use the word allowed with my wife. I'm so sorry I said that on a stage. My wife would kill me. That was, sorry for even hinting at such a thing. I meant the kids when I was talking about that.
That's a good point. I mean, you can weight profiles.
Thank you for getting me out.
Yeah, I'll throw you a lifeline
Bail.
here, Richard. Yeah. No, so you can weight profiles. Like, you're absolutely right. You may not even want, if one of the children is in the room, for the cover art of a certain piece of content to appear on the first page. You might not even want them to see that. And so you can definitely, you can set business rules. You can filter out the things that you don't want to be surfaced in any number of ways, depending on what the operator or the customer wants to do. So there's, we have that technology. I know others have those types of technologies, but that exists. You can put that in the hands of the customer and let them tune their service for what they think is appropriate.
So, sorry, do you want to?
Well, I was just saying that I think, as Tracy mentioned, that the pattern of behavior by the boxes, using time as your friend, helps do a lot of those things so that you don't have to catch it through business rules, because you can't think of every rule you're going to need. So that idea of being able to look at the pattern of behavior for a box in increments, day of week, time of day, works to your advantage in terms of making an assumption as to what's going to be relevant in front of the person who's there at the TV.
We also thought at one time to add a fake me profile. So when your friends are coming in, you'll suddenly get recommendations on biographies, history, so it's...
This is the bookshelf problem, right? Yeah. So you have the bookshelf that's in the living room that has all of the great classics that you've, of course, read multiple times. Yeah. And then you have the bookshelf back in the bedroom that's filled with all the, mystery novels or the detective mysteries, or the things that you don't necessarily want people to know that you've spent hours reading. And yeah, it's someone said last week at a conference, and it was a great quote, and I'm sorry I'm going to butcher it slightly, but they said search is your id, and social media is your superego. So what you actually put on social media is what you want people to think about you, that you're very controlled thought, what you actually tell people about. And search is what you really are looking for. And I
Right, like you're not going to share that you watched Real Housewives of Atlanta last night, but you want it to get related, the rest of the Real Housewives when you log into the Yadio app and find out what you want to watch next, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, a lot of times when people design UIs, there's a tendency to want to put a lot of information about why stuff's recommended. And that also, same reason. It's like, you're sitting there, you don't necessarily want to say.
Because you watched the Miss America pageant, we're recommending.
Exactly, you weepy sap, here's your next show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is a fine line of, even if you are recommending content, finding a way to sort of slip it in there that it's not in your face, we picked this because, you're having a binge eating weekend.
That's a great observation that I've always said be explicit about why you chose something so that people understand. I'm going to take 30 seconds to tell a very funny TiVo story. In the very early days of TiVo, we shipped the product and it had recommendations in it, but they were very rough recommendations. We didn't know a thing about recommendations. And a guy wrote and said, I want to return my TiVo, you're promoting the homosexual agenda. And I was in charge of writing this guy back. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not aware of their agenda. I thought they just wanted to be happy. Could you tell me more about why you think we're doing that? And he said, well, everything that's come on my box has been about the homosexual agenda. And I replied and said, can I please tap into your box and see what's going on? Well, it turns out he'd watched one documentary on PBS in San Francisco, and the following week was Gay Pride Week. And so every documentary on PBS the following week was about gay pride. Well, we were just doing documentaries on PBS. But, we knew nothing about him. We knew nothing. So I wrote him back and said, sorry, if it's not you, it's another member of your family, but you need to look. Just to really freak him out, because he had issues. But it was... But it's hard to know who's in front of the couch and tell them why you're recommending things. And in this case, it was the simplest of just documentaries on PBS. That's what it was. PBS changed their content for the week, not us. So you can get into a bit of craziness. I want to end on just you have roughly 30 seconds to sort of make a point about, when I've been at metadata companies in the past, well, one, Roby, one of the things we talked about was, how do you get your partners to pay more for new services, for new features? So let's say you're really lucky and you've got a manufacturer who's paying you $6 for every box they ship for your metadata licensing. And then you say, hey, I've added voice search and I want you to add $0.25 to that $6. I want you to go to $6.25. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, nobody was willing to up. They had a threshold. It was a number, and that's what they thought they ought to pay each week or each device, and they weren't willing to pay any more. Has that changed, and how do you get that number to move so that when you continually work to add new value to the discovery ecosystem, you get rewarded for it? Why don't we just go in order and end with a bang?
Yeah, I think the easy part is when you have hard numbers. So you see a 19% uptick in VOD, that's great. That's something that's easy to sell. I think as you start looking at some of the soft metrics, everybody's investing in DAI. So you promote more content that's DAI sponsored, and you see uptick in advertising revenue. That's where you have to get more clever with analytics and trying to collect the data points and tie it back. And anyone who's worked on the vendor side knows it's a miserable process, and you just keep working at it. But you've got to have the data to support it, and it's more difficult every year. It's got to be more sophisticated.
Yeah, to your point, it's a tough one. You've got the price metrics of VOD, but our data kind of drives broader content consumption, shows a better understanding of the content and the user. And they hold on to the numbers very carefully as to the impact on that. But it's not an easy one.
I think you got to show that you're doing something that they do not have and they can't do, and show that matters to users. I think for Rovi right now, a lot of it's about the data being dynamic and contextual, so helping them to understand what's relevant throughout the days of the week, time of the day, using data that's outside of the normal 14-day window and what they get. to help that user experience better. And I think you need to be modular, which is what data is all about, to enable them to make their experiences better.
And to help the rest of you have a slightly different answer, do you have to bring your own products that there's a revenue share that, so instead of asking them for more money, you're actually extracting more money from the consumer, but you're sharing that with the manufacturer or the cable MSO or whoever it is, so that you're actually bringing them something, if you, not just new technology, but a new revenue opportunity. Do you have to have that as part of your portfolio?
Yeah, so we, first of all, it's a tough question, but we moved from search to recommendations, and now we are adding those magazines. So this kind of exploration, finding content or finding content what to watch through exploration. And with these magazines, there's new opportunities for video advertising, for banners, for sponsorship. So this is how we try to monetize these services and do revenue share. So it's a new type of services which we hope to monetize. Still tough things to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a different angle, but I mean, I think that in the end, you're looking for engagement lift and consuming more content, and in the end, the consumer's happier and is using, your products more and on a day-to-day basis, and finding more content to consume and more services to add to their repertoire, and yeah, just making them happy and personalizing that.
Yeah, their incentive for using you is retention of customers.
Right.
They're actually getting value out of what they're already paying for.
Exactly. Add more services, layer it on.
Rich?
Yeah, I think it's about value, which is time and efficiency. And I think whether it be just simple things like advanced UI elements, whether it be cross-platform services. If consumers spend more time with their TV, they get more value out of their TV. They're ultimately going to pay the consumer electronics manufacturer or the cable provider more, and that's where we extract our value.
So really rapidly, I just got to close.
I think it really depends on the business model of who you're selling into. If it's a subscription, advertising, maybe they just want to make a big marketing splash. If you can move the needle, make it measurable, maybe do some A/B testing. If it works, they'll pay for it. If it doesn't, maybe they'll launch it and then you'll be dead in 6 months.
Yeah, I'll make it real quick. Borrowing the last two, metrics, definitely.
Measurable difference.
Measurable value, and also to some extent now competition, right? There's a lot more video services out there. To some extent for service providers, it's table stakes. You need to have a much smarter interface. You need to engage, and you need to kind of increase your ARPU, certainly. And there are options now. There's options on the second screen. There's a lot of other options. So we've seen competition and really just trying to keep pace with what the industry is doing, driving a lot of additional willingness to invest in these types of technologies.
Great. With that, I'm going to thank a very, very smart panel, and a lot of us just really kept in line. That was great. Thank you guys for a great panel. Thank you. Please join me and thank you.